What's happening, Buccaneers fans, and welcome back to another episode of Here the Cannons, presented by BucsGameday.com, Sports Illustrated's one and only website strictly dedicated to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. My name is CHS Noel on Twitter, but my name is Caleb in real life. I'm a writer and reporter here for BucsGameday.com. Along with me, as always, is our lead editor, River Wells, at River H. Wells on X. We appreciate you guys joining us. If you're watching on Twitter or if you're watching on Facebook, head over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. We're going to try and get 50 likes today. We're going to be talking minicamp, kind of a little bit of short expectations of what to expect with the Buccaneers this season as well. And with that being said, River, we've got a special guest with us today, and Fox Sports' beat writer and formerly of The Athletic, covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Auman, excuse me. Good morning, Greg. How are you doing today?
Good, guys. Good morning to you. Hope you're doing well.
Doing good. Greg, how long have you been in Tampa Bay covering sports? It's been quite a while.
Been in Tampa Bay since 99. Moved here, worked in Atlanta 2 years out of college, and then got down here spring of 99. And I guess it's 26 years.
I hate to do this to you, Greg, but I was born in 1999.
So I was like, come to think of it, River probably hasn't been in market that long. So, yeah.
No,
that's all right, man. It's okay. Anytime. The worst is when you see like a jersey number for somebody and you're like, oh, dude, that's his birth year.
Yeah.
That's impossible, right? Yeah. So, yeah. Congratulations. It would be nice to be 26 again. Happy for you, just like I'm happy to still be here at my age.
Yeah, of course, you've been doing great work for so long here in the Tampa Bay area and covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Greg. Yep. And we have so much to ask, of course, because we just got done with mandatory minicamp. That was 3 days that we just had, and then now it's a long wait until training camp. So we got a lot to talk about. But I wanted to start off by saying, what were your first impressions with mandatory minicamp, and maybe for people watching who don't know exactly what teams do during this time period and how they operate and like what the goal is. Maybe you can go a little bit into that and what the Buccaneers are working on during this period.
Yeah, so minicamp's cool because it's like the last thing before break, if you will. The team has like 6 weeks off now until training camp, so it's kind of like the first chapter. They bring the team together. You get kind of a complete roster, and obviously new coaching staff is in place in some situations. So it's hard to compare it to other things, but it's setting the team in motion. And it's kind of like you have the very first steps where you're installing offense. Then there's more they'll do they could tweak the roster between now and July too. But for the most part, this is the team you're going to go into the season with, and the scheme you're going to go into the season with, all those things. So it's meaningless because it's all, shirts and T-shirts, and no one's really going full speed that much. But it's also your first chance to really see things and get a look at the default kind of pecking order at positions and all those kind of things. So it's really cool that way. And again, just to talk to, usually between OTAs and minicamp, you kind of get a lap through all the key players you'd want to talk to, and you get a sense from them. What are they talking about? Are they confident? Are they hungry? It's kind of neat because there's been different, even though they've had 4 straight division titles, they've each kind of had their own unique identity in terms of coming off a Super Bowl 13-win team with Brady, and then an absolute struggle in Brady's last year. And then you kind of flip a switch and it's now Baker's team, and you don't know who Baker is. And then last year, you know exactly who Baker is. And maybe there's uncertainty because of new offensive coordinator. But this year coming up here, he's kind of unique, maybe like 21. But there's high expectations on this team. I mean, if you look at the numbers in Vegas, they're a strong favorite to win the division in a way they probably haven't been since the year they were coming off a Super Bowl.
Yeah,
normally they've had some kind of at least betting favorite where Atlanta's ahead of them or somebody else is picked to unseat them. And they've enjoyed that. Don't get me wrong. The Bucs like nothing more than to be underestimated, slept on, however you want to call it. So now there's not that much. You can say like, oh man, they only have you 8 in that power ranking. It doesn't really hit quite as hard as when like a year ago, they were like 22 in some power rankings and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's neat in that it's a different motivation. It's like, man, nobody thinks anything of it. It's like, no, there's a high standard they have to live up to that they've now set for themselves. And in that post Brady, that you go from a team that hadn't been in the playoffs like 8 years in a row to a team that's now been there 5 years in a row. And that's, one of the longer streaks in the NFL. So you want to keep that going. You want to make sure every year that's not only the expectation, but it resets a year later. And again, this is kind of the first glimpse at that, who the leaders are, who they're talking about, who they're excited about, where their confidence is, and maybe what the question marks are, because there's still some positions where it's like, oh, okay, I guess that's what they're going with there.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and it's one of those where this is a team that doesn't have a lot of holes. Don't get me wrong. You get to that level where if you're expected to be a double-digit win team, there's not a glaring hole in the starting lineup. There's positions where if they took an injury here, they're not well protected against that, and nobody has 22 backups they feel great about. It's just there's a couple spots on every team where it's like, well, that guy goes down, it'll be a vulnerability. It'll be something that teams game plan and try to, exploit.
Absolutely. And going off of, players potentially going down, I just want to start off here, talking about some injury updates on some guys. There was the Tristan Wirfs. We saw him in the knee brace off to the side a little bit. They kind of touched on Chris Godwin and, where he's at, even though it's not going to be as open to where he is at in his rehab process. And Trey Palmer making his way back, I think, after day one of not being there at practice. And then Benjamin Morrison, I think that's probably the big one on everybody's minds. If you care to give us a little bit of updates on that.
Yeah, so I mean, Godwin's definitely the one that's most likely to kind of be still a thing at the start of training camp. And that's understandable. He's coming back from a major ankle injury. The team has gone out of their way not to really give a whole lot of finite, like, he'll be back on this day, he'll be doing this on this day. We saw him walk onto and walk off the practice field as a spectator. Like there's the exciting update that he didn't have a noticeable limp, and that's about where things stand right now. So yeah, there's 6 weeks between now and then. So you don't know if he's going to be running full speed in 6 weeks. Is he going to be cutting? Start of training camp in July isn't really an important make sure you're back by this day. That's one of those where there's 5-6 weeks between then and the opener. And I think to their credit, they keep saying, consistently that they're hopeful he's back for week 1. You think about he had an ACL in season and came back in week 1. So I think he's kind of shown he's a good rehabber, if you will. It's not something you want to get good at, really, but but it's something he's done before, and it's something they trust. So I think the cool thing about having Egbuka now in there with Evans and McMillan is that it's not like, gosh, how are they going to win in week 1 at Atlanta without Chris Godwin? So if he's not back, if they don't want to rush him back, I don't think it's a situation yet where like pup list is in play or something where you can save a roster spot. I just think there's definitely a window where he might be inactive in week 1. Just because what you want to do, if you've just given a guy 2 years guaranteed, is get him back healthy. You want to make sure when you bring him back, there's not the risk of a setback that now takes away months of the season. So Godwin, like I said, Godwin's the big one, and there's really no news with that at all. Just a generic optimism for, 3 months from now when the season starts, they're hopeful he's there. There's not really a ton of others that are like, wow, what's going to happen. Benjamin Morrison will be a curiosity. He had hip surgery, missed last half of last season with a team that was going for a national championship because he had surgery on both hips. So it's a serious thing, but it's a little bit like Servassier Dennis in that I think it was a surgery to correct a long time problem. And they're hopeful that by doing this, it's no longer a problem and not something's going to come up again. Hips are important for a corner. You want to have nice, loose hips. You want to be able to turn, swivel, all those things. So it's an important important body part for the position. But we saw him out there the first day of minicamp, and he looked pretty good. So I think having him sit out the next 2 days was more about being careful, erring on the side of caution than it was anything like that. I have every expectation he'll be able to go full bore first day of training camp, compete for a starting job. The other question marks, there really weren't that many that were out the whole time of players that you really cared to talk about a podcast. Greg Gaines, who's a top 4 D lineman for them. We didn't see him at all. We're not even really sure what he's dealing with.
And then I think David Walker was also not participating.
Right, David Walker, I think, has a hamstring. So, David, that's one of those where if you get a hamstring 6 weeks, he should be okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes you have guys that just have bad hammies. You don't want that to be that because, it's at an explosive position. It's a key part to keep healthy. But no.
In a very soft tissue sort of thing, too. So you got to take your time.
I think Walker had a chance to show things where the guys that have seen him are excited about him. It validated all the things they liked about him in the draft process. He doesn't have to be more than like outside linebacker 5 this year. Might not even dress week 1 if he's not ready. But he's somebody they like. And as you've got Nelson's a free agent. I mean, there's going to be other guys that are eventually moving out that will have a chance to move up. So, yeah, aside from that, it's little stuff like that. We still haven't seen Sua Opeta, who's competing for a backup job on the offensive line. Lots of bottom half of the 90 types that we can talk about, and they're missing. But it's some of these guys that are hurt, if you were to lose them and just replace them with a off-the-street free agent, it kind of doesn't change your 53 that much.
Right.
So they're a pretty healthy team right now. Honestly, there's not, beyond Godwin, there's not a whole lot that's like, wow, that's going to be tough for them to overcome. But that's good.
Yeah, and
last year was a year dominated by injuries for them.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like huge out for the year, but just nagging. Winfield wasn't right. Dean wasn't right. I mean, they had a bunch of key people. You think about Gedeke missing a month with a concussion. Godwin, Evans out with injuries. Lots of injuries that limited them, I think.
And it's good that that they're looking to allow Chris Godwin the recovery time he needs to get back in time, potentially, maybe after training camp before week 1. But because of that, the wide receiver room, you've got guys like Emeka, Egbuka, and Tez Johnson who've been getting more reps, during these practice periods. And they still have Jalen McMillan, right, who played very well last year towards the end of the stretch, was your wide receiver 3 last year. And then the Bucs went out and they drafted another wide receiver in the first round. So I wanted to kind of get your take on this wide receiver room because McMillan has shown some flashes during mandatory minicamp. Egbuka looks very polished. And then an interesting quote from Todd Bowles here that a lot of people on Twitter, when I tweeted it, were talking about it. He says, he actually has a chance to be a vital part of our offense if he keeps trending the way he's trending, which I thought was interesting because it's just such a crowded receiver room. Right? So it would be really hard for that to happen. I think a lot of people on social media echoed that as well. But what are your thoughts on kind of the battle between wide receiver 3 with kind of what looks to be Egbuka and McMillan, and then kind of where Tez Johnson might fit into this offense? Because really, I think going into this, we kind of see him as a kick returner and a punt returner and a contributor on special teams. And like that's where he's kind of going to make his bank. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, receivers, they're absolute deepest position. For a fan standpoint, it's a cool position to be deep at. It's kind of that fantasy football wheelhouse position where, to have 4 strong receivers, guys you can take in late rounds in fantasy, that kind of thing. It helps them. And I would have said it was one of their deep positions before the draft, before they put a first round pick into Egbuka.
Yeah.
And got a really good deal on a 7th rounder in Tez Johnson. So their battle's all over in that Evans and Godwin, or Godwin and Evans at some point, those are obviously your top 2. They're your volume proven commodity 1,000-yard types. And then McMillan, Egbuka is a really good battle too. I mean, McMillan didn't do much in the first half, but led the NFL in touchdowns in the last 7 weeks of the season. Really stepped up well in Godwin's absence. He and Egbuka, if you watch them in practice, are like identical body parts. I mean, they look like the same guy. And they're different strengths to what they do. I think Egbuka is probably a little bit more of a complete receiver, at least in terms of what we've heard. But again, it's just really nice depth. And then, because so many guys were hurt last year, there's a ton of receivers that played and made plays last year that might not even make the cut anymore. Yeah. So guys like Ryan Miller, guys like Rakim Jarrett, guys like Cam Johnson, who everybody got a little bit excited about last preseason and kind of got hurt. They might not even be able to stick on a practice squad, because you're right now you go into it thinking of as probably keeping 6 receivers. So somebody like Trey Palmer, who's a 40 catch guy as a rookie, is on the bubble. I mean, if he doesn't show up, if he has any nagging injuries or something, he's not a lock to make the roster, or he's a guy that August 28th gets dealt to Steelers for a 2027 7th rounder or something.
Yeah, there were those rumors going around about Trey Palmer. Yeah.
There's so many young guys they have that when it's a close thing for wide receiver 6, you want to err on the side of upside and what could this guy be? They kind of know what Trey Palmer is.
Right.
And I felt like last year with all the injuries at receiver, Trey Palmer had 12 catches all year. Didn't have a single play longer than 27 yards. So yes, it's the guy that had a great touchdown against the Eagles 2 years ago in the playoffs and made some great things, but it's somebody who largely didn't do anything at receiver or returner last year.
Yeah. Had
a lot of returns. I think his longest return was like 17 yards last year. So he's in danger of Tez Johnson taking the return job or somebody else taking his receiver spots. So there's a really good, the second half of preseason games, which can be absolute slog fest to watch in August, will be cool because you're going to have guys that are going to be playing in the NFL at receiver and one of them is going to get 5 for 120 in the second half of a game with backup quarterbacks thrown to him. But again, I feel like it's the one position right now where I feel confident that somebody they cut will be on somebody else's, will get claimed, will be on somebody else's 52. Rockham Jarrett's a guy they've liked, does a lot for a lot of different things. They just have also continued to draft guys in front of him and add players.
Right.
So
and Rockham Jarrett's always looked really good in practice too. He's always made some great plays. And then it comes to that sort of period, and then we got too many people ahead of you.
Healthy. I don't think we've ever seen Jarrett healthy for a full season.
Right.
So there's a little bit of that can't-see factor where maybe he is. I mean, if he's healthy on a team that doesn't have a good depth at receiver, he can be a 25-catch receiver right now. So like I said, I feel like there's a little bit of depth they can play with. I don't even know if you need to trade for a draft pick. Sometimes you do these spare parts trades in August where it's just, hey, team with great safety depth, that guy you're going to cut, why don't you get something for him now? And you just you trade your 54th guy for their 54th guy, and both teams come out of it better. And I could really see them doing that with receiver. It's kind of like somebody you don't expect to keep, again, has a 75-yard touchdown in preseason and shows that he's capable of being an impact receiver in the NFL. You can get something for that guy.
Right.
It's a nice problem to have. And again, it's also smart to insulate against injuries because they had crazy injuries last year where Marquez Callaway and all these other guys that wouldn't even be in your system are elevated or practicing or getting reps. They're definitely in a better position to handle that if there are, a rash of injuries at receiver this year again.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's going to switch sides over here in a second. But if you guys are watching on YouTube, we would greatly appreciate it if you like, comment, and subscribe for us. Really helps us get out all this information to you guys, all the amount of content that we have. Trying to figure out where to point on the screen is always fun.
It's always, you never nail it. You never nail it. Always. Yeah.
But we really, truly appreciate all the love that you guys have. And that's how you guys on YouTube, if you are watching anywhere else, head over to YouTube. That's how you get your comments and or questions up here, which kind of is leading me into our next thing here, which we have a question here asking about the defensive side of the ball. What is happening with Watson? The nod watching all the way from Belgrade, Serbia. We really appreciate you turning in, my guy. Back-to-back weeks here, coming in with questions. Really do appreciate it. So with that Watson question, let's stick along the defensive line here. Obviously, a lot of the minicamp success that you see is on the defense side of the ball because the offense, there's no pads. They're not able to grab onto a whole lot from that standpoint. But talk a little bit about what we've seen from Watson. We've seen him kind of with pictures alongside Kalijah and Vita Vea in social media and stuff of that nature. And then as well as the Haason Reddick situation, obviously that has been put to the side. And he's made some comments himself following practice that, he's just ready to move on. He doesn't really worry about what everybody else is thinking. Cool.
Yeah. So Des Watson, it's awesome that people are asking about him in Europe. That's cool to think about. I knew he was big, but not like international big. So yeah, Des Watson, River and I are Gator alums. So we've known about Des for a couple of years here.
Go Gator, baby.
I don't get to write that many player features anymore. But I got to write on Des before the draft, which was really cool. And one of the more just completely unique, cool stories in this draft class, just because he's so huge. You have, I'm not sure, I didn't really get an update at minicamp in terms of where he is in terms of pounds, but I mean, Gator Pro Day, he's 460 pounds, which is just a crazy amount to play football, let alone to be athletic and to be able to do some of the things he flashed at Florida. If you go back and watch the Gator Bowl game here in Tampa, I took my boys to that game. And again, every time Des has come into the game, there's fans that get excited about it. And bowl game, they're up big on Tulane. So there's this chance, they show him on the sidelines, like this chance Des could get in on offense. And it's literally the loudest the stadium got the whole day. And it was a day where there were touchdowns, the exciting plays. But Des gets in on a 3rd and 1, takes the ball, rumbles for maybe 2 yards, but moved the chains. And the place went crazy.
I was there. It was a religious experience. Yeah.
It was really cool. It was really cool. And then they subbed him out for Marco Rubio's son, who did not get the same reaction when he went into the game. He got a touchdown, and it was just like, oh, okay. So Des, like I said, Des is a cool thing. Really easy to root for. I think there are lots of people at different weights that can appreciate somebody trying to shed some pounds, and he's doing it more to stay alive and stay healthy than he is trying to get a job in the NFL. But for the Bucs, it's a really cool investment because I think he got like 200,000 total, maybe. Didn't really have a huge maybe even less than that. I think it might be like 70,000 he got, but really small investment by NFL standards for a guy who, even if he doesn't stick on the 53 and just starts out in the practice squad, he kind of knew that going in. And I think the idea is, hey, you come in, you learn what it is to play in the NFL. Vita Vea is a guy he already liked, a guy who's huge by most people's standards. He's a good deal smaller than Des Watson right now, but someone who handles his weight well, can move in space despite being mammoth by NFL standards. To learn from that guy, to get in an NFL training table where you have nutritionists who literally can give you every calorie you take in. It's really neat to think about him. Again, you think about like a red shirt in college. If he doesn't play, if he just sticks on the practice squad and gets in shape, and this time next year, he's 380. Okay. He's still the biggest guy in the NFL, and he can move around that much quicker because he's 80 pounds lighter than he was. So it's not like an immediate thing where he's probably a practice squad guy this fall. It'd be really cool if they elevated him in week 4, whatever it is, against the Eagles, and he gets to be their tush push in for 4 plays specialist.
I think that's what everybody's looking for, really.
Long-term investment, right? So anyway, Des Watson, really cool. It's like wore 21 in college and can't wear that now, so he's wearing 56 now. Somebody on Twitter called him Hardy Thickerson, which is the absolute best nickname there is on the team.
I haven't heard that one, actually.
Hardy Thickerson.
That's pretty
good.
good.
I don't even know if Des knows who Hardy is, but for Bucs fans that have been around for a little while, it's a good nickname. You asked about Haason Reddick. We talked during minicamp this week, which was good. There's a little bit of like nervous uncertainty when he wasn't there at OTAs. OTAs are voluntary. Yeah. You kind of get the full spectrum. This is a team where a lot of the best guys show up for OTAs, and Baker's out there, and Antoine Winfield's out there, Dean's out there, guys that make 15-20 million a year still showing up. And the Bucs are in that weird kind of thing where last year they had a pass rusher they brought in, Randy Gregory, who didn't show for OTAs and then never showed. Not for minicamp, not for training camp, never, just didn't show. So I think given that Haason Reddick didn't show last year, had to hold out with the Jets, had a lost year basically, because once he got there, he wasn't himself, had 2 sacks. Because of that, I think when he's not there, when he could be there, there's a little bit of, hey, wait a minute, are we doing this again kind of thing from fans. And I thought he did a good job of, again, when we talked to Haason after he got signed, said all the right things about wanting to be here and wanting to help get this team to another level, get himself back on the map and recognized as an elite pass rusher guy. Haason, this is a team that Bucs are a team the last couple of years have kind of had, Vita Vea leading them in sacks with 7 or 8 sacks or something like that. You go back to their build up to a Super Bowl. A big part of that is Shaq Barrett setting the team record for sacks and JPP getting double-digit sacks and having somebody who teams had to build around in terms of stopping that guy. So I think he was asked this week, like, hey, is there a number for you? I mean, because Haason's had 4 straight double-digit sack seasons with 4 different teams, which has never happened in the NFL. And it kind of speaks a little bit to like, hey, why do you keep changing teams? But it also shows he can step into a brand new place and still get 10 sacks. So it's neat. And he's like, no, it's not about any numbers or anything personal. The best years I haven't had any kind of number goals. And he's like, but maybe double digits, And that, again, for the Bucs, that's a cool thing. If you get him, you're paid at $14 million. It's not like he's getting crazy $30 million a year pass rusher pay, but you want him to be in a position where whether he returns or whether he goes somewhere else, he costs that team more. If he can play to reset, hey, you're still that guy, whatever, 29 or whatever he is, that's good for him. And that's what you want. And whether the Bucs move on and get a 3rd or 4th round comp pick, or whether they bring him back and they pay him, all you want is for him to kind of reestablish himself as the elite game-changing pass rusher. I in 22, when he's in Philadelphia, I got to cover the Super Bowl. And that week I wrote Reddick because Reddick had like an MVP season in 22 where not only double-digit sacks and whatever it was, like 14 sacks or something, he had like 5 forced fumbles too. And Reddick's big thing that I wrote about is that he had a college coach that told him, like, it's not enough to get to the quarterback. Like, if your goal is to get a sack, you're doing it wrong. So he's a guy who wants to get there, but is already thinking about getting that ball knocked out. Yeah. And again, if you listen to Bowles this offseason, he's
Ball
hammered
hawks.
takeaway ball hawks, whether that's guys in the secondary catching passes or just pass rushers forcing fumbles. That's what they need. And that's this offense, as good as it was. I felt like one of the reasons that this offense had so many yards is that they were starting most of their drives at their 30. There weren't a lot of short fields. There weren't a lot of defensive touchdowns. So you can make life a lot easier for the offense if you force a sack and they start over in the red zone. Or again, defensive touchdown. That's fine. And I think Reddick is a guy that you bring in with that in mind. I don't know if he'll have 5 forced fumbles, but if he has 3 or 4, that's a win. That's what you need from him.
I think we'll take that.
For sure. And, Reddick mentioned sometimes the solo goals align with team goals is what he told us. And 10 sacks, double-digit sacks would certainly go a long way. We're going to stick with the defense here, Greg, because we have 2 questions, and I'm going to kind of bundle into one because they're both about safeties. We're going to do a buy one, get one here. Obtuse Angle here on YouTube says, Greg, would you agree that safety room is the weakest position group? And then a follow-up question from JJ, do you think Shilo Sanders will make the 53-man roster? A lot of people want to know about Shilo Sanders ever since he came from Colorado to Tampa Bay. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, safety, I would agree. Safety is one of their deeper, or not shallow positions, if you will. Didn't really add much. Let Jordan Whitehead go. Tyke Smith, was kind of a quasi nickel / safety last year. So Tyke, they feel really good about. I mean, it's definitely Winfield and Tyke are your 2 guys. And then there's just a lot of young depth behind them. Not even like a vet you'd point to like they've had in recent years. So it's interesting because you have a guy like Kayvon Merriweather, and Merriweather was a guy that they cut in season, chose to go to a different team's practice squad, came back because of more injuries and actually played pretty well. But then it's mostly young guys. Not a lot of people know Rashad Wisdom, but like Rashad Wisdom was working with the 2s most of this.
Yeah, we were talking about that. That was pretty interesting.
And it's like you're like, wow, like that guy. I had kind of lumped in like him and Marcus Banks were the 2 that spent all of last year on the practice squad, and you don't know, are they ahead of this year's undrafted rookies? And he definitely is. Maybe Banks has been hurt, so I don't know if he's out of it or just hurt right now. But the 2 names that we need to talk about in terms of cool long shots that could really stick on the 53 are J.J. Roberts and Shilo Sanders. And everybody knows Shilo because he's Shedeur Sanders' brother, Deion Sanders' son. But from a currency standpoint, from a what did it take to get them here, Shilo got like $1,400, which is like NFL need a penny, take a penny type compensation. About as small as it gets. And they guaranteed like $300,000 to get J.J. Roberts. So of those 2, there's one that they liked a lot more. It might be a little bit that like they know who Shilo is. They know Shilo made a lot of money in college. His dad's made a lot of money. He doesn't necessarily need a lot of money. So I don't want to say it's only about money, but J.J. Roberts is a guy they've had a lot of praise for, is kind of gotten a little bit of cross training where he could be a backup nickel and a backup safety. His measurables are off the charts crazy. He's got like a 40-inch vertical, like a 4.4 40, good size, good hands.
Big RAS guy. Big RAS guy.
So right, exactly. And the Bucs really like that. I mean, that's kind of who Zion McCollum was 3 years ago.
And Parrish also, if Parrish wasn't as short as he was, the rest of his measurements are absolutely off the charts.
Yeah, so it's cool. Like you can see a world right now. You still have guys like Dean and Winfield's a vet. He's going to be around for a while, but there's definitely a world in which if they moved on from Dean, you'd have a really young DB group, a lot of 1st and 2nd year guys, Morrison and Parrish. And again, maybe Roberts.
Hunter Burke's still there.
Hunter Burke's in the mix at corner. He could definitely stick as well. But it's a little bit like that 18-19 when they had Murphy Bunting and Mike Edwards and Jamel and Carlton that were all kind of growing up together. And it's cool because they learn together. They're inexpensive together, if you will, as DBs go. And it's great because you eventually get to a point where you have to pay them all. But in that like 3rd, 4th year where they're still cheap, but they're experienced, it can be a really good place. That's where they won a Super Bowl last time. So, yeah, I don't know whether Shilo makes 53. I would be surprised if Shilo makes the 53. He will have to show himself to be a much more active and productive special teams player than he's ever been to make that to stick. He could. It's there. He hasn't done anything. It's like you'll watch drills in minicamp, okay? And the order at which a position goes through a drill, you always kind of are curious. It's not like they do it in descending order, but they kind of do. So, like I posted a video of just just a strict safety, approach the line of scrimmage, catch a pass, and run with it. And it was, I mean, it was Winfield and then Tyke. It's where we kind of first saw Wisdom with the second team. And Roberts was probably 3 guys ahead of Shilo in that pecking order.
Yeah.
Could just be that day, could mean nothing at all. But I feel like Roberts right now, if you picked an undrafted rookie to be the 4th safety / 3rd nickel, I guess, behind Parrish and Isian, I think Roberts lines up really well for that right now.
Yeah, and appreciate you guys coming in here on YouTube and asking these questions. We really appreciate it. We're at the 14 likes now on YouTube. I'm keeping an eye on it over here, guys. Try and get us to 50. We're really reaching for that as much as possible. But we have another question here from Timothy Ward on YouTube that pertains to the secondary with somebody we previously talked about, Benjamin Morrison. He's asking what is up with those contract talks. And then I also kind of want to stick with the 3rd round cornerback draft pick and Jacob Parrish and talk a little bit about him looking like he's going to be manning down that slot position there for the Buccaneers this year.
Yeah, so Morrison is a 2nd round draft pick, and without getting too inside baseball here, almost none of the 2nd round picks have signed. The first 2 did. It's quirky, but the deal is there's not, most NFL rookie contracts are really kind of boilerplate. It's just, this is what this guy made last year. Here's a slight raise from that. It's going to be a little bit less than the guy who got drafted before you. It's going to be a little bit more than the guy drafted after you. But there are certain things that can be negotiated. And one of them is 1st round picks, for the most part, have their entire rookie year deal guaranteed. Kind of like you can cut a 1st rounder in year 4, he's still going to get paid. And it's slowly creeping into the 2nd round. So the first 2 picks in the 2nd round signed fully guaranteed deals, right? And that's like big progress. Again, before they had like 3 years and part of the 4th year guaranteed. So it's not this monumental change, but you don't want to be the agent whose 2nd round pick signs for less than fully guaranteed money. So all of them are just kind of waiting for somebody to be the bad guy. Maybe it's just a big agent who has 80 clients, isn't going to care if his guy doesn't get everything. They're getting paid the same. It's just, would you get a big check in year 4 if you got cut, which is a dumb contingency for a 2nd round pick anyway, but it's why they're not signed. It's nothing unique to Benjamin Morrison. He's not asking for anything greedy or unfair. This is that time of summer where Benjamin Morrison's doing everything he would do if he was signed. So it's not impacting him in any way. It'd be cool for him to get it done and get it signed and out, but everybody else is in the same holding pattern right now. So it's nothing.
So we're not talking to Shamar Stewart situation.
We're not talking to Shamar. Shamar's a little bit worse and probably has a little bit less chance of working. This is going to work out fine. It might be now that they wait until a week before training camp starts and he signs, or it could be that next week there's just this floodgate and 28 2nd round picks are all signing because they all got 80% of their contract guaranteed in year 4. But anyway, Morrison, nothing wrong with what he's doing. And again, the hip thing, I think, will work itself out. That's not a problem. He's somebody they're really excited about, to have somebody who can push Dean and McCollum. It reminds me a little bit with these 2 corners, what the Eagles did last year, with having a 1st round pick, a 2nd round pick, that early in the year, I guess their 1st rounder started pretty much the whole year. But Cooper DeJean was the guy that barely played the first 6 weeks of the season. And slowly they had more confidence and worked him in. And by the Super Bowl, he's getting pick 6s and stuff and winning games for him. So I'm not saying either of these guys are Cooper DeJean, but I think they really like these 2 corners and like the ability to slowly get younger and better with them over time. Parrish is a cool one. Like you said, Parrish right now looks like the nickel. It's kind of like if Tyke is a safety and there's really nobody pushing Tyke at safety to make you think he'll stay at nickel. Then nickel's kind of open. I mean, it would be Isian kind of by default. But I think Parrish is the guy for that. I mean, he's a guy that they swear they'd be comfortable with him outside. And you'll see Parrish double repping in practice where he's a nickel with the 1st team and an outside corner with the 2nd team. So they're cross-training him, which is really smart. If there's an injury, they can go there. They've talked about, again, if they really like Dean and Morrison, they could put McCollum in the nickel even. I don't know if that's ideal, but you'd have a really big nickel in the middle for sure. But anyway, like I said, Parrish is somebody they're excited about. Really tough. Like I said, not huge. If he's 2 inches taller, he's a 1st round pick. But did a lot, ball skills, all the things they're looking for. Versatility, can rush him. It'll be fun to see how it shakes out. But right now, you'd think, as things stand, if everybody's healthy, it's probably Dean and McCollum on the outside, probably Parrish at nickel, and probably Winfield and Tyke at safety. with good depth behind them.
Yeah, they'll have to make a few decisions there, but I think you're right. They like the young core they have, and Todd's always talked about how Parrish can, be outside, be inside, and that sort of versatility is something that they really like in those defensive backs. We're gonna conclude it here, at least with our final minicamp sort of philosophical question about the Bucs, with the offense and Josh Grizzard. And Josh Grizzard is coming in after Liam Cohen left for Jacksonville, and he's going to be their offensive coordinator to being their passing game coordinator last year. Liam Cohen's offense was top 5 in a ton of metrics, but one of the things that the Bucs couldn't quite really figure out was those explosive plays and those long downfield splash plays. And we've had a few people ask some questions and get a little bit of a vibe for just how much this offense is going to kind of start going vertical, especially because Grizzard was in Miami with Mike McDaniel, right? And Miami did a lot of that sort of thing, and I like those big splash plays. So what is your impression on that? Because on day 1 of mandatory minicamp we were watching, they were doing a lot of short game work, a lot of screens, dump offs, flats, but they started kind of stretching the field during day 2 and a little bit during day 3. So do you think that you could really see this Bucs defense kind of take that Grizzard flair and go a little bit more vertical and downfield, or do you think they'll mostly stick to a similar Liam Cohen sort of scheme and kind of keep it in the short and intermediate range?
Yeah, the big question is, like, what will they tweak? What will look different? What will be unique to Josh Grizzard? Because I think he's in a much different boat than Dave Canales or Liam Cohen was, is that they both those guys inherited kind of mediocre offenses, terrible run games, dead last in the NFL, good passing games. But I think Canales went from I think he was 22nd in the NFL in total offense. I mean, I think Liam took it all the way up to whatever, 5th, if you will.
Top 5 unit, yeah.
Right. So what's cool about Grizzard is that Grizzard inherits almost everything from that top 5 offense.
Right.
I mean, personnel-wise, offensive line is there intact. There's that cool stat where they return more than 100% of their offense.
Yeah, which is kind of fun. Yeah.
It's like the only person not back that had a rushing or receiving contribution is Tavierre Thomas, who lost 2 yards on a fake punt.
Right.
So they have more yards. It's like 100.03%.
Yeah.
The point being, he has everything there. And to where we're in the other 2, we're trying to take these big leaps forward. All Josh really has to do is keep this thing humming, and it's kind of like take over and keep driving and make them a 30-point offense again. So like you said, one of the ways they can get better is definitely the deep game. There was the throw Baker had to Egbuka this week, and it's one of those highlights where you watch it and the ball is the only thing in the frame for 3 seconds, it seems. And he catches it for a long touchdown. And last year I can remember asking Liam, hey, again, everything is really going well on offense here, but you guys have 3 plays of 40 yards or longer. Does that even bother you? When you're scoring as well as you are, when the offense is moving as well as it is, do you even care that you don't really have a deep game? And he was like, no, not really. It's one of those where they could do it, but if what you have works as well as it
ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. Just keep rolling with it. So I do think as a reset, when you add deep talent at receiver, Egbuka is a guy that can definitely, if you line up with Mike and Chris and McMillan and Egbuka, you've got a nickel and a safety involved in coverage.
Yeah.
And one of those guys is not going to be covered well. So if you can just protect long enough to let Baker figure out which one it is, that will open up the deep goal. They really weren't a full receiver team at any point very much last year. They were hurt a lot.
Yeah.
They like having a back and Auman on the field at all times as a default in that offense last year. And that probably is still the case, I think. But I do think there's a world in which they go out 4 wide and they say, hey, we're going to try and outsprint you down the field, see what we can do.
It'd be a tough Hail Mary team to defend.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is where I feel like the lack of kind of proven depth at tight end, again, if you're choosing between a double tight end look and a traditional 3 receiver set, you're going to go with 3 receiver set a lot, unless you're really trying to sell a run. The talent is there. That 4th receiver is going to be a bigger threat offensively than anybody that would be your second tight end, more so than last year even. So I do think, Baker had amazing passing numbers last year. It's silly to ask him to improve on those. If he even matched them, you'd say, great job. But that's one area where they can get better. They don't have that many times where they got 80 yards in one play. And that's something that'll be there for them with the talent they have at receiver and the depth there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just to end it off, I've got a little fun thing here for you, Greg, from our friend, fellow writer, reporter. You just saw him earlier this week, JC Allen, coming on here to say, I forgot to ask this to Greg on Wednesday, but who does he think is the most hated rival player by Bucs fans? Been a really hot topic going around on X and social media lately. So, Greg, who do you got? And he also chimes in here and he says, current and all time, which I think it might be the same.
Yeah, I think we all have a name in mind. I think, yeah.
All right, so just by process of elimination, right? It pretty much has to be a division guy, right?
It does. Yep.
There's not really anybody on Atlanta. I mean, there's guys on Atlanta that are good, that are hated because they're good, but not like actively engaging with Bucs fans and pissing them off. And the Panthers
slowly filling in the wheel of fortune,
right? I feel like you could have done like Julio there because he tormented us for years. But
right. Oh no, and there's some where it's like, oh man, that guy every year, how many career touchdowns does he have? That kind of thing. So I would have said, like you say, like, gosh, what about New Orleans? And then
that's crazy.
Marshon Lattimore's not there anymore, so you can't do that. Even Marshon was probably most hated by Bucs players, with a few in particular. Fans, I don't even know if it was definitely there, but no, it has to be the number one answer. And if you're answering otherwise, I'd be curious why. It's Cam Jordan.
It's 100% Cam Jordan. I don't think it's even
again like Cam. I mean, Cam has actively trolled Bucs fans for like 5 years, and has done that entirely in a world in which the Saints aren't really a relevant team in the playoffs. I think he had like a little bit of like the Breeze success behind him when he started doing it. And like Donovan Smith like gets an extension. He's like cheering for, I don't remember who it was that he said was going to be feasting on that. And again, like there was a time there where the Saints defense, like when Dennis Allen was the coordinator, the Saints handled Brady and handled the Bucs offense better than anybody for a while. I think Cam has continued to he's Cam. He's not going to change who he is, but it's continued to talk when their efforts on the field haven't necessarily been as good to back him up. So yeah, right now, I mean, Cam, he's one of those where like you look, I don't have him on notification, but if I had to have like an opposing player of the Bucs on notification to guard against him talking trash, it would be Cam probably. Yeah, I think that's an easy answer. I think I'd be curious who else, like if I'm overlooking somebody, there's not anybody
I don't think so.
Actively stokes the fire the way Cam.
I mean, I personally took solace in writing a lot of Marshon Lattimore pieces in my early start of writing for the Bucs. So that was fun for me. But I couldn't. I can't.
And it's funny because
he does it for the love of the game too. He really does. It comes from the heart. It really does.
The Saints, and I mean this, Saints Falcons is a more long-standing traditional rivalry than Saints Bucs. So when like Cam has said a couple times, like, we don't even consider him a rival. Like the Falcons are their rival, but Bucs Saints has just had so many, again, like multiple cases of Mike Evans leveling Marshall, getting suspended for hits on Lattimore, and back and forth. And C.J. Gardner-Johnson had something one year, and Cam Jordan has talked a lot. There's so much that's going on with just active feuding. I mean, it's a professional wrestling level of public hate. And again, you don't want that, but it's fun, and it makes it an easy answer when you guys ask about it. For sure.
It's fun. Well, I think that's all we got for you today, Greg. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast. It's always good to hear you talk about the Bucs and get your insight. And, we'll be continuing here at BucsGameday to give you guys some content. There's a little bit of a long wait until training camp. We got, about over a month. So we'll see how that goes as we talk about some new players and what they're expected to do as we get into this next phase of the offseason. But if you like what we're doing here, smash that like button, subscribe, go to YouTube. And as always, fire the cannons.
Fire the cannons.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. We'll do it again.
Thanks, Greg.